My name is Jordan Doane. I'm a Solutions Engineer here at KeyShot. I want to show you guys a new feature in 2025.2 called AI Shots. It's a really amazing new add-on. I think you guys are going to love it. So let's jump into it. And this is a quick overview of what else is new in .2. The bulk of it revolves around AI shots, but there's some other pretty significant updates you can find on our YouTube page, mostly around lighting, some SolidWorks plugin updates, but it is a very, very significant update. So what is AI shots? It's hard to conceptualize on a PowerPoint slide, but I'll do my best. And I want to remind you that all the images you see in this slide are straight from KeyShot, made using AI shots with zero post. I think the best way to describe this add-on is AI image generation, something like Dolly Midjourney, mixed with the power of KeyShot's real-time ray tracing. Again, hard to conceptualize, but if you look at the images on the right-hand side, we started with a clay shoe model in a basic environment with no backplate. Every material and all the backplates you see are created using AI shots with a text prompt. There are 3 different modes within AI shots, the first of which is background mode. This one is amazing and a huge time saver. So the image on the top right-hand corner here, classic KeyShot image, I believe that's actually a screenshot out of the real-time view. The image below, I've used a simple text prompt of place this in the sand on the beach with clear blue skies and waves in the far distance. And this is what we get. So when I say it's image generation mixed with the power of KeyShot, this is what I mean. I'm getting amazing shadows. It understands where my primary light source is coming from, the front of this transparent material. It understands matching perspective, scale, things like that. Me personally, this would take me hours in post, and I probably would not get to this level of quality. This took maybe 2 minutes within KeyShot with this new add-on. Another example on the left, classic KeyShot image. On the right, I'm using the prompt, place this in a pile of volcanic ash. It definitely understands the assignment. Very simple, no post. That's the actual render. And the way I like to describe this mode is that it focuses on everything that exists outside the boundaries of our geometry. Now here, it may be a little bit deceiving, and it appears that my backplate is overlapping. That is intentional. It's going into this recessed area of the KeyShot ball, but it is very much filling in the gap on everything that exists outside the boundaries of my geometry. Now, the second mode is Restyle mode. This focuses on everything that exists within the boundaries of my geometry. So specifically, material creation. Again, a classic KeyShot image on the top right-hand corner, just a clay interior. I've simply used the text prompt, restyle this as a Gothic church interior. And this is what I get. So not only does it understand the assignment, it understands it in an industrial design kind of way. Very useful. Shadows, lighting, everything is the way I'd want it. So it's an extremely useful tool here. Some more examples of that. Let's say I'm doing something slightly more product focused and I have half of it dialed in. I love my tires and the windshield and the interior on the top left, but I just can't nail that body paint. So the bottom 2 images, I've used a text prompt to create that body paint. And again, going back to image generation mixed with the power of KeyShot, I'm applying this to a metallic paint material, and I have a ton of control over it. And we'll see that in the live view. But another product focused example here. Let's say I have my stainless steel hardware totally dialed in on this guitar, and I'm really struggling with the paint. Using a text prompt within Restyle mode, I'm saying restyle this as a guitar with a worn black painted surface. And I can pick and choose where I'm applying the materials it creates. For the backplate, I think I simply said, place this on a fuzzy blanket with a houndstooth style pattern. Now, the third mode is Imagine mode. This one's actually awesome. This is the actual UI here on the right-hand side. So we have Restyle, backdrop, and imagine. So if Restyle focuses on everything that exists within the boundaries of geometry, and background mode focuses on everything that exists outside the boundaries of my geometry, imagine mode is neither. It's just pure image generation based off my text prompt. It does not take into consideration what's in my real-time view. Now, the beauty of AI shots is that it's totally local, doesn't connect to a cloud whatsoever, doesn't require Wi-Fi, actually runs slightly faster without an internet connection. So I kind of misunderstood the benefit of this mode at first. I thought, okay, I'm on a plane, I don't have Wi-Fi, I can still do AI image generation. That's kind of neat. But there are some massive benefits to this mode that I've found very useful. Here's some examples of it in its purest form. These images are generated using the text prompt, imagine a sculptural bicycle with a frame made of intricate hand-carved filigree patterns. So this slide kind of goes into some advanced use cases here, specifically mode transfers. I was somewhat spurious of AI this time last year. This add-on kind of forced me to embrace it. So I'm still a bit naive on everything, bear with me. But for those of you who are in the same boat as me, there's a seed number attached to every single image it generates. So going back a slide to these bicycles, if there's one that I really like, I can retain that seed number and apply it to my other two modes, which we'll do live. And it's a bit hard to conceptualize, but it's a very cool workflow. So in this example, I've asked AI shots to imagine a dirt bike with anodized green and black aluminum. Again, really understands the assignment. Tires have rubber, there's heat-treated metal where it should be, decal application is pretty accurate. So let's say I really like this bottom right one with this kind of Kashima style coating on the forks. And I want to apply that via a mode transfer with my seat number. So I'll take this image in the top right. I can right click with an AI shots and say, retain that seat number. If this is what was in my real-time view, the bottom right-hand corner, and I restyle it with the seed number from this image, this is what I get. And it's pretty darn close. I'd make a few adjustments here and there, but it really gets the material distribution based off of that. Another really cool workflow with Imagine mode is making seamless textures. So I've used the text prompt here, intricate carved wood texture, repeating, seamless, suitable for texturing. This is what I get. And let's say I like this guy in the top right. I can just apply that the way I would with my classic KeyShot workflow as an image texture to drive my bump, my diffuse, whatever it may be. And it is truly tileable. Another example, create a seamless texture of a tie-dye print suitable for tiling. So let's say I like two of these and I want to put them on Softgoods. It's a very flexible way to create very usable textures. Now, there is a barrier of entry in terms of hardware for this, and that's 16 gigs of VRAM. Now, we don't really care how you get to that sweet spot. It's agnostic in terms of what kind of GPU you're using. KeyShot historically has been very focused on NVIDIA RTX GPU for the real-time view. M4 MacBook has enough VRAM for AI shots, and it will work brilliantly as long as you can get to that sweet spot. It will perform. And with that being said, we are now supporting AMD GPU in the real-time view as well. All right, that's the bulk of it. So now we can jump into KeyShot and do it live. Now, the first time that you open 2025.2, you'll find the AI shots button in the bottom right-hand corner. The first time you click that, it will trigger a 12.5 gig download. That's our proprietary engine built on top of Flux AI. The reason for this is that it's totally local to your workstation. Data can't leave the workstation. It does not connect to a cloud. It is very secure. Think of this like a plugin for KeyShot. It won't trigger a reset. It's not a standalone installation. As soon as that download completes, you'll have access to the UI you see here on the left-hand side. So as we discussed, we have the three different modes: Restyle, Background, and Imagine. Stop-start button for the engine. Now I'm running this heads up display, which is hotkey H. And you can see just by virtue of being open, it's taking up a little over 10 gigs of VRAM. Now, some of that is allocated to recording, but the general consensus is that this will eat up about 9 gigs of VRAM just by being open, hence the 16 gig VRAM requirement. With that being said, KeyShot's always been very focused on NVIDIA RTX for the real-time view. This is a separate engine, and we're pretty agnostic in terms of what GPU you use. So an M4 MacBook, more than enough, you'll get brilliant results. AMD, RTX, as long as you can hit 16 gigs VRAM, you're gonna have a great experience. Now, best practice, in my opinion, is to not run GPU for the real-time view and allocate as much of my VRAM as I can to AI shots. So with all that being said, let's jump into it. So our 3 modes are text prompt input. I have my resolution presets, and this gear icon will let me unlock resolution as well as define the seed number. It'll default to 4 images total. So let's go ahead and do a restyle on this one. Let's pick a couple different cameras. I like this one and 7, let's say. Okay, so we'll lock these. Now, before I generate some images, I want to show you what's actually going on under the hood. If I open geometry view, which is hotkey O as an Oscar, we'll see here, this is an OpenGL representation of the real-time view. So this red camera is my active camera. That red square is my current field of view. And you'll find a little crosshair, and that's the camera target there. AI Shots is going to generate an image based off my text prompt that will fit this field of view perfectly. So it's camera dependent, if not camera critical, but I'll show you how to retain consistency with camera variation on these modes as well. But let's go ahead and do a restyle. Now, the best cadence that I've found so far is restyle it with this CMF approach, light it in this manner. It should evoke this feeling. So let's give that a try. Restyle this tricycle with a black and blue ABS material. Use natural outdoor daytime lighting, and I found that it is very forgiving on text mistakes. It should evoke the feeling of a downhill racing team. Now let's go ahead and generate that on high res. This may be placebo, but I like to pause KeyShot while it's generating these images. Again, different engine. Now, while that's loading, some of you may have worked with my colleague, Don Tuttle, training specialist. He made a ChatGPT assistant. Now, this is not a licensed KeyShot product whatsoever, and we can't speak to the security of GPT, but it's remarkably useful. So it'll kind of guide you in the cadence. So if I don't get something that I love based off this prompt, I'm very curious to see what the assistant would suggest for restyle prompt. But let's see what it's doing while that loads up. Now, as I mentioned, restyle is very focused on everything that exists within the boundaries of the geometry, but it's going to fill the gap on the background. And it's probably some of my language. Restyle this tricycle, I might take that out, but you really just need to focus on what we see within the boundaries of geometry and not so much the filler that it's adding on that backplate. I really like that one though. Let's see here. Yeah, let's try this one. So I can hover my mouse over this. That looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and save that image. Now, this doesn't have the traditional KeyShot drag and drop functionality that you're most likely used to. I actually need to manually save this image. Come in here and apply texture. Specify that that was RS01 that we just saved. And to take it a step further, In the dropdown, I need to switch it to camera mapping and flip vertical for that texture. And now I'll match 1-to-1 what I see in this image. So let's see what Dawn's assistant suggested. Restyle this tricycle using a black and blue ABS material palette with subtle matte and semi-gloss contrast. Use natural outdoor daytime lighting to highlight dynamic surfaces and aerodynamic lines. The overall look should evoke the energy, precision, and team identity of a competitive downhill racing crew. KeyShot AI should preserve geometry and layout while adjusting style only. So this is a beautiful example, and I think we'll get a really great result from it. The truth is, with these AI engines and your text prompt, flowery language will get you farther. I think more is more. And there's prefixes and suffixes that are very helpful. The most noteworthy is this: KeyShot AI should preserve geometry and layout while adjusting style only. So let's see what happens with this prompt. And while that's loading, I'll explain. It's about a minute in the image. I'm running a 5090 mobile. So maybe 45 seconds an image, a little bit longer with Teams eating up some resources and recording this. But here we go. Now, again, I just need to focus on the actual imagery created and not what it is assuming it should add in the background. And go. And the other option, now I've kind of done an overarching approach here where I'm applying that material to everything. I can mix and match here, or if I have this unlinked and I actually have a separate material that I want to use on the handlebars, you're not locked in. That's just my approach for this section of the demo. Let's see what we have here. I kind of like this one. We'll try that guy and call it CO2. So again, if I really want the wheel to have this aspect here, I can just unlink these parts. Go ahead and change out the texture to the new one, which is RS2. And again, we're going to go to camera mapping and flip vertical. And there we go. Now I can mix and match my own materials. Whatever I see from here, I can copy and paste that if I want to take some liberties here. So you have a lot of freedom, but it's very camera dependent again. So if I move to the free camera, you'll see what's going on under the hood here. It's a very sophisticated and clever method of masking this, and it works very well. But let's say my creative director absolutely loves this image, but we need it for this angle. Not quite usable. So this has been my workflow. If this is the one I like, let's say we're going to go with this guy. Just replace this real quick. 0, 1. So again, that's camera, vertical, and I'm sure that this workflow will be updated very soon. But we have this guy. I can go ahead and right-click, reuse prompt and seed, and change to this camera angle. Now, instead of doing 4 images, just doing 1, I've eliminated the potential for variation by locking in that seed number. But let's go ahead and see what it does. It should match this pretty darn well for this camera angle, and I have a fairly high degree of success with this. We can go back and refine the text prompt if it's not perfect. But moment of truth, let's see here. Not bad, I like it. So I'll save that image. We'll call that RS03. And actually, let me take a step back here. So we're going to this camera. I like to do multi-materials with this workflow. So I have one material for the other camera and one for this camera. So that was our S03. Switch to camera mode, flip vertical. Oh, there we go. Forgot to relink those parts. So now I have a material set for this camera angle and one for this camera angle. And my personal preference is to use Studios, which are essentially a save point within KeyShot for any of these variations we're applying. And I can specify what variables are retained in my Studios. I know I want my camera, my environment, and my multi-material. So if I add a studio, whatever's in the real-time view is saved. And we'll switch my camera and material here real quick and add a studio. There we go. So now these are retained and I can cycle through these with one click and not manually change everything. Now let's move on to background mode. My personal opinion, Restyle mode is extremely useful for determining a CMF approach internally or doing client review with the current iteration. Background mode, this will blow your socks off. I think it's customer facing, ready for Fortune 100 companies. So let's give it a try. I'm going to say, place this at the top of a steep grassy hill. Again, background mode, it's very camera dependent, but we can use that same workflow to retain consistency to a certain degree. Let's see what it comes up with here. And I will just override my current environment with that as a backplate. Okay, I like that first one quite a bit. Let's save that. But I really think that this is where rubber meets the road. Pardon the pun with this specific scene. But this stuff is just amazing. This would take me forever to do in post. I'm certainly not a Photoshop expert, but I could spend 4 or 5 hours and probably not get to this result. I think it's absolutely brilliant. That first image is great. The rest are awesome. And that's a pretty basic text prompt. So again, let's give Don's assistant a try. See if it guides us in a different direction. So I'm going to do a new chat here. We'll go background. Paste that. But in my experience, more is more with the text prompt, not just on this engine, just with AI engines in general. Right, that looks brilliant. Let's try and go to our other studio and retain that one and see what kind of consistency we get. So I'll put it on a color background. This is the one I like. Let's reuse prompt and seed and start generation. We should get fairly close. And while that's loading, let's see what Don's assistant said. Create a background of a steep grassy hill with uneven natural slopes and soft daylight from a high sun angle. The ground should feature detailed grass textures with hints of wildflowers and earth beneath. Love that. The mood should feel open, airy, and natural, ideal for showcasing outdoor or lifestyle products. Ensure the horizon remains distant and the subject stays grounded clearly on the crest. So again, going back to prefixes and suffixes, this is extremely useful, and very deliberate language will get you pretty far. All right, that's not too shabby. It's not at the top of the steep hill, but I think it understood the assignment in my personal opinion. I'm not sure if my creative director would accept it, but he would know I'm going in the right direction. Backplate 2. And I'll just make a new environment that has a different backplate here. There we go. So again, I can go back in, delete these studios, create new ones that will retain those variables. So let's go back to camera 7, this environment, that material. make sure it's on the back plate here. Add a studio. So now I'm cycling through all those variables. I can actually batch render things out. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Yeah. Maybe a discrepancy within my studio, so I can go back and double check that as well. So I just need to specify the multi-material is retained on the second studio, and then it's actually this one. And now we're in good shape. I can redo the thumbnail. Now we're in business. Okay, so here's one of my favorite workflows with AI shots, and that's Softgoods. Let's take a look at this hoodie. I have my main part and both of my sleeves. So let's make something more dynamic with Imagine mode that isn't so reliant on the camera and allows me to move my geometry around. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Imagine mode to imagine a tileable, seamless, woven tie-dye print. We'll go with high, 4 images. Let's see what it comes up with. Now, I'll apply this via UV mapping to the existing geometry. We'll get a great result. This is not camera dependent. I can do as many camera angles as I want. It's a traditional KeyShot workflow in this sense. That one, not really sparking my interest. Let's see what else it comes up with. And while it's loading, I wanted everyone to know, you can put in, I believe it's up to 32 images. Potentially, that's capped by your VRAM. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe 32 is the max on the number of images. Right, that one looks very seamless. Let's give that one a shot. So I'm going to save that as Fabric 1. Last one as well, I'm going to save that as Fabric 2. Let's go ahead and apply the. So we'll take my sleeve here and let's go ahead and override the color with Fabric 2. Now I've been going with the camera mapping and flipping vertical. This is a traditional KeyShot workflow, so I can pick my mapping type based on the application. So let's do UV. Now I can scale this up. I can change my underlying material to something like real cloth. Ignore that, that's the life of an SE here. But let's go ahead and change the scale of that texture independently of the woven knit we have here with the real cloth material. Perfect. And let's just put in a super high value here. Loose scene units and a little bit lower here. Let's try 350, and then we'll do Fabric 1 on this part. So same workflow, assigning the color. Let's find what I just saved here. Defaults to box. I'm going to switch it to UV. Mess with my width, and there we go. Now this is truly dynamic and no longer camera dependent. Forgive me, the back is not UV mapped, but these parts are linked. But now we have something super cool based off of image generation within AI shots. Okay, so let's try this with some interior workflows. Here's the scene we're looking at. I have a really primitive interior, these panels and some furniture. So let's say maybe for this example, the bench is all done. I just want to put this in a realm. So maybe I have something like this, really basic interior. I have my bench. Let's see what Restyle does for a background. So I'm going to save this camera, lock it, and let's restyle this as a mid-century modern interior. Now, one thing to keep in mind, the geometry that I have visible within the real-time view is going to be baked in the image. So if I isolate the interior and don't include the bench, I'll get some different results, but we'll do both. There's definitely benefits for each option. Let's see here. Oh, and I broke my own rules. I'm running GPU in the real-time view. Let's turn that off and see a speed increase. Okay, I like that one. Let's give it a try. Now, as I mentioned, the bench is going to be baked in. It's going to retain whatever geometry is visible, but I don't have to apply those materials to the bench. So let's save this as mid-century modern interior, and I will simply apply it just to the clay interior. Camera, flip vertical. And now I can add the actual bench here. So I have a really cool background here. Some awesome options, a little loft here. And again, I can mix and match as long as the perspective is consistent on the images it's generating, which is why I like to use this clay model or use a primitive background. So it will understand that metadata and translate with a consistent perspective this way. So let's try it without the bench real quick and see what happens. We'll use the same prompt. Again, we're sticking with that same lock camera. Now, the only difference here, we won't get the same shadows from the bench in the image generation, but it shouldn't really matter because I'm actually adding the geometry here to the scene. But personal preference, let's see what happens. This one, so I'm actually glad this happened. There's less metadata for it to interpret in the real-time view now because I've taken that bench out. And this being primitive geometry, it doesn't have as much to work with. So you can see the perspective is getting skewed. So my suggestion is definitely stick with as much geometry as you can add to get that result. Let's go back here. There we go. So that's one of my favorite workflows for doing furniture type things, interiors, exterior architecture shots where, you know, I don't want to deal with adding bushes and things like that. Very, very useful. All right, so one more interior exterior workflow I really love. Doing something like this with primitive geometry again. So let's take our free camera and scroll out and see what we're working with. Very primitive geometry, just those planes to define the space. And then I have something like this chair that has some pretty cool materials and glass and things like that. This is really where I think KeyShot AI shot separates itself from any other engine on the market currently. So when I'm generating a material for the background here, the way we did on the previous example, and then I'm adding this chair that's completely painted with the traditional KeyShot workflow and standard materials, I'm getting accurate refractions and reflections through that glass material onto the ground as long as it's set up properly and scientifically accurate. But this is a huge, huge, huge gap filler in my opinion.